Hello guys, my name is Velin Georgiev and I'm a SharePoint developer for a very long time. If you see if you hear a background noises, these are my kids singing Happy Birthday Vesa downstairs, so don't freak out. Now today we're going to talk about automated pipelines. So the demo that I will try to show is building from scratch. Raja is trying to take control. I'll just reject again. So what we will do is we have a SharePoint Framework solution, and our source code is in a GitHub repository, and we'll link that GitHub repository with Azure Pipelines, and then we will bundle and package the solution here in an automated way once you submit a new piece of code into your repository. And then once we've built the new packages, we will use simple scripting using the PnP Office 365 CLI 2 to deploy that to our tenant, to deploy the changes we've made on the solution here. So I already have my tenant prepared, and this is the tenant app catalog, and my package is already been deployed there, and the web part within that package is already being installed on a site within that tenant, and it shows version 20. At the end, version 12, at the end, we'll have version 13 here, hopefully, if we can set up everything within the time frames. So let's assume that I just manually published that version here, and now I want to create an automated pipeline that everything is fully automated end-to-end, so I don't have to manually drag and drop here again. So here is my GitHub repository, and I had to upload my solution there to save some time, and it's called Pipe 1, and it has nothing to do with Azure Pipelines. It's not automated, it's just a bunch of code in a GitHub repository, and we'll start from here. So the first thing to do is to install the Azure Pipelines here, and I'll go to the marketplace to show you where that's located. So if you go to the marketplace and if you go to deployment apps, you'll find Azure Pipelines there. So you can click that one and you can simply install it. So if you haven't done that before, you get an install button here, but because I've already installed the free tier, I already have different buttons here, but it's the free tier and it's good enough for all your experiments, so you can experiment right after the demo. What I'll do is I'll configure that to work with my repository. So I'll go here and I'll say configure, and you have some details here, but at the bottom you can say, okay, configure Azure Pipelines with all my repositories, or just select some of the repositories here, and that's my preference here. So I'll just add my new repository there. So that repository is not part of the list here, and you can see all my previous tests, but I'll just select that one and add it there. Once I save that, it will try to redirect me to the Azure DevOps. And with Azure DevOps, you need an account. So you have to create an account with Azure DevOps. You have to log in with that account. Then you go through a wizard, nice wizard, that will link a GitHub with Azure DevOps. So I have to select my organization here, and this is the correct one. And I'll create a new project there, and I'll call it Pipe 1, exactly as my repo is in GitHub. Then I'll be navigated to another window, where, as you can see, it's more like a wizard experience here. You're clicking and you're navigating, and that thing will open Azure DevOps with my new project. So now I'm in Azure DevOps, and this is my new project here. And I'll have to select my GitHub repo, and this is the correct one. Then it will try to go. Now we already linked GitHub here, and it will try to go into my GitHub repo and identify what piece of code I have there, and it will try to recommend me a configuration. As you can see, it's smart enough and figured out that this is a Node.js, or it has something to do with Node.js, and I can use it, or I can select from a different templates here, even here. So for me, Node.js is good enough. I'll just pick it up. And then it will generate a YAML file. So the YAML file is my build. So we'll have two pipelines. First pipeline will build our package, our SPPKG package. And the second pipeline will release that package to the tenant. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm using that YAML file to create my first pipeline, which will be the build pipeline. And as you can see, there is like a YAML and there is a markup here, and we can easily recognize the trigger master. That means that whenever I push a new code to the master branch, it will trigger that build and it will try to create a new build for me. Then the pool is what type of virtual machine I'll be using to build the package, and this will be Ubuntu in my case, but you can use Mac or Windows here, but I'll stick to the defaults here that are recommended by them. Then the next one will be, once we get the virtual machine to do the compute for us, it will install Node.js. So that will install Node.js 8, and after that it will run a script that will say npm install. npm install is nice for us, but we don't need npm build because the SharePoint Framework is using gulp. So I have to add an extra step here, and I have to say there is another script that I don't need the build here. Instead, I can say test, because I have unit tests, and the JS testing framework will run the unit tests, and if they fail, they'll fail the build, so I can replace it with test here. But after that, I have to do go clean, go bundle ship, and go package solution ship. So this will create the sppkg file there. So that's my next step. But I'm not done yet. I have to do 2 extra steps to complete the whole flow here. So I have to do another task here. And this is all documented within the document. So you can go on that URL there and you can see how to build those steps here and the markup and what that means. But basically, the last step for me is this is a virtual machine. So that virtual machine, they'll spin up a virtual machine for me. They'll build the package, but that package is on the virtual machine. And once the build is done, the virtual machine will be closed or deleted or whatever, and my package will be gone. So there should be a way for me to store it in Azure DevOps, and this is the last step here. What I'm saying is, get it from the virtual machine and store it in Azure DevOps. So we'll be stored. That will be stored in a folder called SPFS SPPKG, and I can just store it here and use it with my release pipeline or whatever I want to release out of that build. But I need another extra step here, and I'll just paste it here, and I'll have another artifact out of that. So this will be my package here, and this will be my release scripts. So basically, I'll create 2 folders stored in Azure DevOps. One will hold the SPPKG and another will hold the release script. And I'll show you the release script in a moment. But this is basically a bash file that will connect to the tenant whenever I start building the release pipeline, and it will grab the package from Azure DevOps and it will upload it to the tenant. But I'll put it for now here, and this is my build, and as you can see, these are all the steps, and I'll just save and run. Okay. So that will that will save the YAML file directly in the source control. So that can be used everywhere. It immediately goes back to GitHub, saves the YAML file, and it starts the process. So it will try to find the unavailable Ubuntu agent, and it will try to run all these tasks that you saw from the YAML file. So it's initializing the job, and then it will try to install Node.js here, and then it will try to do npm install, and that might take a while. And while this is running, I'll just show you the deployment script here. So as you can see, the source code, if I refresh, you'll see a YAML file here. And this is exactly what we've built previously. There is the YAML file. Now, I have an extra piece of script, which is a bash script, and it's using the CLI that we will run when we have the build and when we have all the artifacts built. And this is how it looks, but I'll use that script in a moment. It's just for you while we're waiting npm install. It accepts 2 parameters here. Then once we get those 3 parameters, it will try to install the Office 365 CLI. It will output the version. Then it will try to connect to my tenant. using the credentials, then it will try to add the package to the tenant catalog, to the tenant app catalog. Then it will try to deploy it with a skip feature deployment. That means that the new package will be available for all the sites within the tenant. It's a very simple script, and we will use it when we build the release pipeline. So let's see what is happening here. It's almost done with npm install. Then it will try to run the tests, because I have tests within my SPFX solution, and it runs jest, and it will try to spin up. It will try to run jest after this is done, and it will try to execute the tests. So the test execution will start here, and it's always good to have unit tests when you have an automated pipeline, because in a case of a test failure, you can just fail the build and ask whoever is responsible to fix the solution. So the npm install and test is done, and that was very quick, but I can show you that all the test suites are run here, and I had 20 tests and they all passed, just for your information. And then build and package is done, and then it's creating the artifacts. So after it's done with the artifacts, we'll get a nice blue button here that says the artifacts are ready, and these are basically 2 folders with files. The first one is the script that I'll be using in the release pipelines, and the second one is the package itself. So they're saved in Azure DevOps, and I'll use them in the next step. So this is the build pipeline. It's done. It was successful. Now we have to create a release pipeline that will actually deploy the package that's been built. So I'll add a new pipeline here. And unfortunately, we still don't have that YAML experience for release pipelines, but I hope that soon will be there. So I'll say empty job, and I'll say that's my dev environment here. So this is the place where you select your artifacts, and I know that my artifacts are stored in Azure DevOps. So I'll just try to find those artifacts here. As you can see, you can pick up artifacts from different providers here, even from Jenkins, but mine are stored here, and they're stored in pipe 1. And then that's important. That's alias that you set up, and because my PnP Office 365 CLI script uses that alias, I'll just replace it there. But this is your alias. This is basically the folder where your package is. Okay, and then once we have the artifacts here, we can click on that button and enable continuous deployment. That means that with every build, it will deploy to our dev tenant, if we have a dev tenant or dev environment. I have to do another additional thing. I have to enable that here as well. So once those 2 are enabled, whenever new build is done, it will automatically deploy the package. So no user intervention. But we have to do a little bit more here. So I've clicked to tasks here, and I have to set up how exactly that will be deployed. So I'll be using Ubuntu machines again, because I'm using the CLI, and I can use whatever I want here. But then I'll add one extra step. So it will find a release agent for me, which is Ubuntu, and it has to install Node again, because the CLI is using Node. So I'll install Node here, and another extra step is after Node is installed, we'll run a bash script. And that bash script is part of our artifacts that we've just built. So I can click on that thing here, and I can find my artifacts. As you can see, the package is here. The script that I'm going to execute is here. So I'll just select the script here. Then that script requires 3 parameters. So I have to set up the 3 parameters there. And the way to do that is you pass arguments here, and those will be taken from, you can hardcode them here, but obviously I cannot hardcode password here. So you have a place where you store variables, and I'll take them from there, and I'll create those 3 variables there to see just how it works. So I'll create the first variable, that is site, and I'll paste my site there. I'll create another variable called email. paste my email there. And I'll create a third variable that is a password, and I'll make it a password field so you don't see my pass. And we should be good enough to run that thing. So I'll save it. And then we have our pipeline ready. Now, the only thing is to just test it. So I'll have to just make a change in my code. And what I will do is I'll just change the title here from 12 to 30. And I'll say git commit title changed. Then I have to pull from the repository because Azure DevOps modified my repository. So I have to say git pull rebase. That should be good. And then I have to push it to the repository. So once I push it, that will go to the master branch. That's saved. That will go to the master branch, and I'll show you what is the experience here. Like I have 3 commits here, and the third commit is in progress. As you can see, the previous build was a success. Now I have another build that is running, and if you click on that dot here, you can get more details. So you can go here, and it still says in progress, but you can go directly in Azure Pipelines. So I can open that, and I'll be navigated to Azure Pipelines here. And you can see my build running at the moment. Again, npm install, all these steps will be repeated again. And you can see if I click on my builds, you see that that's my second build because I did a change. My first build was okay. So that indicates that it's still running. After this is done, it will trigger the release pipeline, and we'll see a list of a release pipeline. But while this is running, I'll show you something else. So on the release, it's very quickly I'll edit that release, and I'll show you that you can have your dev environment here, but you can clone that one and you can create a QA environment, for example. And for your QA environment, it's good to have a QA approver, so it doesn't immediately go there, but instead you can say pre-deployment approval. And you can assign a QA leader, someone to pull the code in QA when the QAs are ready to accept that code. Something else is you can clone again, and you can have a dev environment, production environment, sorry. So the same thing with the production environment, you can set it up. For example, that could be a release manager approver or something. So it's not automated there. It will be only automated when it goes from build to dev, and your dev environment will be always up to date. But then you have approvers here, and that works very good. And let's see what's happening with the build. It's still running. Okay, I have 2 more minutes. Hopefully, we'll be able to see the change.
I think we can go slightly longer than that if needed. So if somebody needs to drop, they can say the recording afterwards. But we probably want to see this in practice. Absolutely.
Good. What's happening? It's still running. Okay, almost there. I'll make it. I'm pretty sure. So here is my catalog, and I deployed an hour ago. After all these pipelines, automated pipelines, that will refresh, and my web part will hopefully refresh to version 13. If I change that, yeah, I've changed that. So let's see how it goes.
And while that's doing that, so let me also clarify the fact that since we are talking about SharePoint Framework web parts, and that SharePoint Framework web part is, even though it wouldn't be used in the tenant scope deployment, whenever you have the new SPPKG file deployed to the app catalog, it will be automatically updated. So you don't have to go to the site level and upgrade the web part, because the instance is always coming from the app catalog site collection. And that is a big difference, obviously, with SharePoint add-ins versus SharePoint Framework, but it gives you the centralized control on what are you actually running. So
yes, thanks, Lisa.
We'll get there.
Yeah, so the dev release is running, so the build is done and the dev release is running, and it says in progress. So we'll just check the dev and we won't check the rest. But as you can see, it's pinned up Ubuntu agent, release agent, It installed Node. Now it's running the bash script, and everything seems pretty good so far. So at the end, that will connect. It will add the new package there, and it's done. So everything seems good here. And if I go to my tenant and if I refresh here, you see that the time here should be different. It should be a few seconds ago. Let's see. There you go. And also the web part on the site that's been installed should change to version 13. There you go. So 20 minutes automated pipeline, and everything seems to be working just fine. I did integration with GitHub, but you can use Azure DevOps alone, where your Git repo is in Azure DevOps, if you will. A few more things to notice. This is not the absolute best practice. For me, it was just to set it up in 20 minutes and show you how it works, and we can talk in a separate session what is the best practice and what is quality gates and what is a pre-flight build and things like that. So this is not the true best practice, but as you can see, you can set up something automated in 20 minutes, which is great. And it's for free. You can start experimenting even now.